Welcome to the Brothers Random Show. My name is Travis.
I'm Michael.
And we are two ordinary brothers discussing extraordinary ideas and some random shit. So the topics...
Yeah, let's go.
So the topics on the show are mostly will be filled with theology, politics, masculinity, movies, books, pop culture, and many other subjects. We will be talking about people we admire and learn from and the wisdom that they project. People such as Ben Shapiro, Thomas Sowell, Matt Walsh, Megan Kelly, Chris Williamson of Modern Wisdom, Joe Rogan, Candace Owens, Adam Carolla, Larry Elder, Gary Vanderchuk, Barry Weiss, Mike Rowe, basically everybody at the Daily Wire, and especially from Jordan Peterson, who we believe is the sage of our time. If you do not agree with any of the teachings of the previously mentioned people, we ask you kindly to move on and fuck off. Michael, why are we here?
So we started just talking.
It was after COVID. It's after COVID.
Yeah. And towards the end of COVID, we just started talking over the phone. And
pretty much
like
weekly.
Once a week.
Yeah.
We were just once a week, we talk on the phone. And both of us are Jordan Peterson fans. And a lot of overlap and just things that we were listening to, books that we were reading and things like that. And just enjoying our conversations once a week about stuff like that. And you actually mentioned it first. You're just like, one day you're just like, dude, what if we just started recording these conversations?
So for me, I've been wanting to pretty much do a podcast for a long time. And there were two separate iterations when I was originally thinking about it. I mean, I even bought the equipment. This was right before COVID. So for me, I had a better job, a job that was paying the bills and gave me a lot of time off. And due to COVID, I lost that job. And what it did do is it enabled me to, so I was on the road all the time with my new job. It enabled me to call anybody I wanted to. And so I started calling you. So the two iterations that I originally thought of is, one, I thought, what if we watched shitty movies and got together and just talked about shitty movies? And this was years ago when I thought about that. Like movies that are like guilty pleasures, like Resident Evil movies. Do you remember those?
Oh, okay.
There's like six of those movies.
Calling those movies shitty. But
they are shitty. They are like terrible movies, but they're entertaining.
When you say shitty, I think like what's that dog one? Or like Piranha, or like
well, like they're movies.
Megadome or whatever.
Yeah, Piranha like 3D and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's like, these 3D are so terrible.
So you get to see boobies like 3D up close and personal. Yeah.
It's just they're not good. So that was my first idea for a podcast. Just watching crappy movies. And then my second idea came along as like, well, why would I just talk about terrible movies? I like talking about movies that I like. So I thought, what if I started a podcast where we just talk about movies? So the thing is
we should have put Critical Drinker in that influence, because
I'm
a fan.
Yeah, I am.
Shout out to Critical Drinker.
Shout out to Critical Drinker.
If you're watching this, brother,
he's definitely a non-PC kind of guy. So there's that. But anyway, so we started a pod. So after COVID, I'm talking to you probably weekly. And we had a discussion about the Bible being true and if it mattered. And these are topics that Jordan Peterson talks about quite a bit. So if any of the audience is interested, you're going to need to go look up some Jordan Peterson videos about the Bible, and they are very, very good. He has a series on Daily Wire Plus called Exodus that by and far is one of the best things he's ever produced. And we will be discussing that at length through the course of the podcast that we're doing. We will probably do some commentary on that stuff. But anyway, the story is that when we had a discussion about that, and we were both talking about the Bible, and we just decided, and I said, why aren't we recording these? I mean, that discussion was so deep and so awesome, Michael. It gave me chills going up and down my back. And that was what, 2 months ago that we did that? So
yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So anyway, we just thought, well, why aren't we recording these and let people listen to them? So we will get heavily into theology, mainly because how were we raised, Michael?
Well, addressing the elephant in the room, we were raised polygamist, fundamentalist Mormons, and
is the non-pejorative term for them, right?
Yeah.
Fundamentalist polygamist is the nice way of talking about them. So there's that.
And we're gonna kind of go into a little bit of a timeline, but to bring it home to a few people that might know or understand, Cody Brown is our brother, and Cody Brown of Sister Wives on TLC. And
a reality show on TLC for the audience who doesn't know.
Yeah. So
you have been on the show. I have not.
I have. I've been on the show. You never wanted to partake, and I get that, and it's totally cool.
This will not be about that show. This podcast, we are just telling audiences where we come from.
It's going to get out. It's going to get out, so we might as well just address it.
Yeah.
Yes, we are Cody Brown's brothers.
We have less hair.
Talk.
So yeah, there's the elephant in the room. He's a reality TV star. I haven't watched the show in 15 years. How long has the show been going? I don't even know how long it's been going.
13 years. I think it's been 13, 14 years.
Yeah.
And I basically watched everything that was on Netflix, and then that was it.
I don't think
it's even on Netflix anymore. Yeah.
It was on Netflix?
At one point, there was like 3 seasons or something like that on Netflix. And that was it.
That's
and
crazy.
I just watched what was on Netflix, and then that was it.
So bizarre that it would be
for
on
us.
Netflix.
It was and I don't know if you felt this way, but for me, it was like watching a family like documentary. It was like watching a family.
Well, yeah, I was hearing about
movies.
Major things that happened in their lives from the show. I was like, really? That's how that happened? Why didn't Cody call us and ask us for some help or something? Stuff like that. Yeah. It's just crazy.
It's all good, but
it's reality. It's not really real. Everybody's.
I don't know.
It's heightened reality is what it is. So.
They got to tell a story. So
yeah.
Anyway, that's a little bit of our background, and we're gonna dial it back because a lot of stuff has been coming out. I mean, you've got Under the Banner of Heaven. You've got Keep Sweet, Pray, and Obey.
Which is on Netflix. Under the Banner of Heaven, by the way, is on FX and very good.
And Hulu. That's where I watched it. Was through Hulu, I think.
FX is the company. Sorry, FX through Hulu. It gets a little technical, cool. but I can
totally
write people with that stuff. So just a quick background on both of us. We were both raised in a polygamist. I like to call it cult light, kind of like Coke light, like Coke. I don't
know. The LDS Church would probably be cult light.
Maybe.
We were a little bit more cult heavy.
And we'll get into the history. We'll get into the history of this. But so I have, let's see. I left in high school. I left the fundamentalist church. Which what did we call ourselves at the time? Do you remember?
There was a group. There was the work.
It was called the work.
Technically, it was called the AUB, Apostolic United Brethren.
Yes,
and
I left in high school. You actually married a girl who was in it, and then left. Right? Is that how it worked?
I was in it for a long time, and we can kind of talk about like our process, or at least my process of being in it and then leaving. So if we'll kind of get into that, I guess.
The hubris of starting a podcast channel on YouTube where there are millions, trillions, maybe, who knows, is that we were having these discussions, and I thought, and we both thought, we were like, we kind of have a unique perspective because of the way we were raised. Not wholly unique, because there are several people who've left the LDS church or the fundamentalist church, for lack of anything better to call them. Polygamists is what we call them, I guess. But we both left. I joined the LDS church. I'm still considered a member, even though I don't go to church. There's a lot of complication in our beliefs, and we'll get into that. So, so let's go with some history. You left. Let's just say you left recent. It's been within the last 5 years.
6 years, I guess.
6 years.
I mean, it's kind of weird because there was never really, like, we just kind of stopped going.
Yeah,
there was never really like a, and I can kind of talk about like some definite points in time.
Yeah.
That were like, all right, I don't know about this. I don't know if I'm going to come back to meetings or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where I kind of, it was a progression, right?
Yeah.
There was a progression that kind of happened, and we just kind of quit going. And I'm sure a lot of people, LDS, might kind of relate a little bit to that, where it's just like, well, I don't know about this. Well, I don't know about this. And then just kind of quit going and just progressively just
the extremes
floated away, I guess.
Well, there are extremes, because you see like these people who leave and then they just go nuts, and then they're like promiscuous and they're all over the place with their religious beliefs and stuff like that. And then there's these extremes where they were, they self-isolate. I don't know enough of them. You probably know more of them, because I left a lot earlier than I made it very clear when I left that I had no intentions of living this way. Yeah. So why don't we get into the history?
Yeah.
And you wrote.
And side note on there is like, we, hopefully down the road, we'll kind of have some of these people on that have had that progression out as well. Ben Brown, being a comedian. He's our nephew.
He's our nephew.
And we may not agree with him, I guess, ideology in
socially,
politically things, but it would be great to have him on and some others to kind of dig deep into their like progression out and things like that, whether it be out of polygamy or just out of the LDS church. So, but yeah, let's go into some history. Okay. So, I'm just we'll go over kind of a timeline a little bit for a lot of people who are listening who have no idea. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm not now. I'll be.
Oh, disclaimer.
Up front.
Disclaimer. We are not experts at anything. We have a lot of ideas And that's what we're talking about. So the disclaimer here is don't sue us if we get something wrong. I'm sure in the comments we will have the correctors because that
There will be plenty of trolls, and to be honest, also there will be people who will legitimately know a little bit more or better, and they can in the comments correct us. That's totally cool. Like, let's be nice, people. Let's be cool. But
the correctors, they will correct us.
Right. So, so in the spring of 1820 is supposedly when the first vision happened, right, with Joseph Smith, right?
Explain the first vision. No, not first everybody's going to know.
Yeah, no, not everybody's going to know, but basically, Joseph Smith, the founder of the LDS Church, it is believed
that Joseph Smith,
that he
allegedly
was searching for the true church, the right church, right?
Yeah.
And basically inquired. He read in the Bible. I'm going to blotch it, but it's James 5:10, I think, that where it says, if you lack wisdom, let him ask of God. And which is a great premise, but he went out in the woods apparently. And I say apparently, but I should be honest. I'm still on the fence about a lot of this stuff. So
as are we both, because we're both still searching.
Yeah. So we should have Ben on because he'll just be like, bullshit. So it'd be fun to just kind of
that's why I'm saying allegedly, right?
Yeah,
so it's allegedly he went into a forest and God, it was God in Jesus.
Yes. So two personages.
Yes.
Supposedly, God the Father, Jesus Christ, right? Which kind of flies in the face of a lot of Christianity because of the kind of the notion of the Trinity being that
they're all one.
They're all one, right? So that right off the bat, he's kind of flying in the face of a lot of Christian beliefs. Mm-hmm. And so, and with this, let me kind of, where we're talking about these things, I live in Utah, and I have great people that I love who are still staunch, every word of the Book of Mormon is true kind of stuff. So I just want to,
we are not trying to tear it down.
Yeah. Address it with love. We still have family members that are in the LDS church, but then also the polygamous church that we love. Right. So we don't want to address any of this with like guile or
malice.
Hatred. We can have Ben on for that, but so
he'll rise to the occasion.
So first vision, two personages appear to him saying none of the churches are true, and you're going to start the church that's true, basically. Yeah. Then 1823, so a couple of years later, the angel Moroni appears to Joseph Smith and tells him about the golden plates, right? Where
and Moroni is this is all Mormon folklore, essentially. Yep. This is all specific to LDS.
Part of the Mormon faith. Yep.
Mormons,
and Moroni is a person in the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
That was a great leader and a great prophet, and he was, in the hereafter was given, the
stewardship
of kind of helping Joseph Smith get these plates, and which no one could see
except for him.
So
there's a ton of when you look at modern cults, there's a ton of red flags when it comes to Joseph Smith.
Right.
So like there's a ton of similarities between him and L. Ron Hubbard, who invented Scientology. Like if you get into the weeds with L. Ron Hubbard,
you get into it, there's a lot of interesting. So So yeah, anyway, so he started in 1828, he started scribing the Book of Mormon. So gets the plates.
It's
right?
arguably done divinely. So his claim was that this book came to him, and basically through divinity of some kind, he is able to write a book, a bestseller by all modern, what do you call it? Bestseller by all modern standards.
Mm-hmm.
And he starts an entire church based on the book, which is why it's called the Book of Mormon. And that's why they're called Mormons, even though they consider themselves, the acronym is LDS, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Now they consider themselves Christians, and they do study the Bible, but I would say in the last 20-25 years, the Bible has taken a back seat in the LDS church, and the Book of Mormon is almost exclusively what they preach.
I mean, it might depend on who you talk to, just because they may be trying to push more to the Bible due to a lot of the scrutiny recently.
Yeah, recently they've had tons of scrutiny.
Had on the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
So, and that cult-like kind of mentality, if viewers are wanting to, they can dig deep in Under the Banner of Heaven, digs deep into this
cult mentality.
It's very interesting. And it's Andrew Garfield. Andrew Garfield
is phenomenal in that show.
That guy does an amazing job in that show. So
we'll get more into that, but let's finish your spiel.
Yeah. So let's see. 1829 completed the Book of Mormon, and this will mean some more a little bit later. But in 1829, the Aaronic priesthood and the Melchizedek priesthood were restored. So basically, Joseph Smith,
the power of God on earth.
Power of God, power of God on earth, and
that's what it's believed to be.
Yeah. So, and we'll have discussions about priesthood. I mean, I'm sure throughout there'll be a lot of talking, about that. I have had a evolution of what to me what priesthood is and what it means, because I was a Kool-Aid drinker, but that kind of a Kool-Aid drinker, but then also
no, you were fully on board with this. Like I started questioning in high school and stopped associating myself with it. Then I married an LDS girl and I joined the LDS church. But in recent years, like within the last 5, probably, I've seen some stuff that I'm calling BS on myself. But I don't disparage anybody. If we have family members who are going to be watching this, or anybody who's LDS, we're not here to talk terrible about them. We will be slightly disparaging about them, because when you come from a cult mentality, it should enable you to inherently see the BS that people propagate. And they do. And this is something I've said to my family members. I've said, what's the biggest problem with religion? People. So anytime we start a religion, it's going to have flaws. Which is why maybe the answer isn't religion. Maybe the answer is just the Bible. Maybe that's it.
I don't know. Well, what the fuck do we know? Because like Jordan Peterson says, like, what do you know? You're gonna fix religion, fix society, and leave it and not have anything to do with it because there were some flaws in it. Which, I mean, in a sense, he kind of says a little bit hypocritical, because he doesn't attend church, although his family members have started to be kind of staunch goers, I guess you could say, participators of.
But see, this is what I like about his teachings, is because he hasn't figured it out himself, but he is struggling with it. And maybe the point is the struggle always. Maybe we're always going to struggle with religion.
Israel.
Yes. People who struggle.
Who struggle with God.
Or wrestle with God.
Wrestle with God. I like wrestle better.
Yes.
I'm sure the translation is kind of nuanced in that, but yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, people who struggle with God. Dude.
I've gained more religious. We can get into that later. Go ahead and finish your thing.
But same. I mean, I've gained a new found
perspective on
just perspective, and also just appreciation of, especially the Bible, but of religion and faith and spirituality through Jordan Peterson, and just how he's kind of come. And we're not the only ones. There are guys out there, tons of people that are just like, this is a different shit. Maybe I should read this Bible thing and try to, kind of figure this out.
It's got me wanting to. I haven't read it all the way through, but it's got me wanting to more. I mean,
we can get into that, but I actually, at 19 years old, I sat down cover to cover.
Cover to cover. That's
cover to cover.
That's a big feat.
It's and surprisingly, not a lot of people have done it.
Oh yeah, tons of people haven't done it.
It's kind of interesting. Anyway, moving on. So 1830, the Book of Mormon was published, and they organized the LDS Church. Right, wasn't exactly called the LDS Church at the time, but started. Basically, that's when the church started. Now, and we'll get into this a little bit, but a lot of the polygamous groups, this is where they kind of claim some authority a little bit, because the priesthood was restored before the church, which is like an organizational entity, recognized by the American government, et cetera,
mm-hmm.
The priesthood was restored before the church was even around, right? So we'll kind of get into that, but there's some before.
Yeah, we're getting into the weeds with it. So
well, it'll come up later, because I'm going to kind of get into like polygamous groups where they branch off, and
Oh yeah.
So
because there's a
1838, Lilburn W. Boggs issued the extermination order. This was kind of interesting. I didn't know some of this stuff when I was kind of looking this up.
Well, and this is kind of a badge of honor for LDS people, because the idea that persecution means you're doing it right. So if you're persecuted, and it's ancient, the Romans did this to Christians, right? The Romans put the Christians in the pit, the Colosseum,
lion pits, Colosseum.
Yep. Yeah. So this is kind of a badge of honor for LDS people.
Now there's a lot of history, and that's a whole nother, and maybe we can have like a history buff on to talk about it, but like it was a real thing. It was an extermination order. We will exterminate them, or we'll get them out of our state. That was Missouri.
Well, so they were practicing polygamy at the time, right?
Probably.
Yeah. So that's why.
I mean, there was
imagine being a regular dude in Missouri at this time, right? So regular dude, he's going, why does that guy have 5 wives? I can't even get a date. So that's what's happening, right? So they're going, this is wrong.
I'm sure there was a lot of that kind of going on.
Yeah.
There was, and there's other stuff. There's accusations that Joseph Smith was sleeping around, kind of getting out there.
Cody likes to call him a rock star. He was a rock star, and so women threw themselves at him. Which, I mean,
we'll see.
That's one way to become a leader of huge cult, right? Okay, so anyway.
I guess. So one thing though with that is I didn't know this, but there was a skirmish that happened, Battle of Crooked River, which was a little skirmish that happened. 3 Mormons were killed and 1 Missourian was killed. And that's kind of what set off the governor, Wilbur W. Boggs, doing this extermination order. He was just like, Mormon, I'm guessing Mormons are a problem. We got to get them out of our state. Now, interestingly enough, I was watching, it was a history show. It was like how the states were made, like how the line, and he just goes to the different states and studies the history, how the lines of the states were made. And like little wars, like little skirmishes between states and like wanting to create state lines and stuff, that was happening all throughout our history.
Yes.
Crazy shit.
Well,
just was happening.
Well, the what was the range wars in Wyoming, right?
Oh, dude, yeah, same thing. Yeah, exactly.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, sheep herders fighting cow herders, like
just killing each other.
Yeah,
it was crazy. It's like that's why it was insane. The Wild West.
Wild West, man. Yeah, exactly. So they get kicked out of Missouri. They end up starting Nauvoo, Illinois, building a city, right? They get kicked out. They go, now to their credit, hardworking, whatever the case, industrious, go out like nobody wants this swamp. We're going to make a city.
That's how Mormons are now. They're nice. They're nice people. They're good to other people.
Industrious. Yeah.
And they're industrious.
Like, I love the Mormon people. So we need to, like, when we're talking bad about the religion, like, let's just be honest. Mormon people are some of the, and I remember hearing this on Joe Rogan, just some of the coolest, nicest people.
Wasn't he talking about like a neighbor he had that was Mormon or something? Somebody was. Something. And he basically was like,
they would probably talk about Park City, God's country, I think he said. Park City. And Park City is amazing. So
yeah, it's amazing.
It's true.
Park City, Utah.
So God's country.
Talking about.
And nice people.
I've only spent like 3 days there, and I thought I want to move here. So it's like that's all. There's a reason. Well,
we got to get Jack. We got to get Jack Carr on the show. So,
he lives among all the Mormons, drinking his coffee, his Black Rifle coffee.
Oh, is that is Jack Carr part of Black Rifle Coffee?
No, but I think he totes.
I'm sure he's been on their podcast.
Yeah,
so.
I think he has. Yeah.
So they start Nauvoo. Emma in 1842, Joseph and Emma start the Relief Society, which at several different points of time, the Relief Society was the largest female organization
in America.
So, and starting out, what's that?
In America?
In America, I believe in America. Yeah. I mean, history buffs, correct me in the comments, but I'm pretty sure there were a few times there where it was the largest, basically female-ran organization. Now, to my understanding, and once again, it's been a long time since I've stopped kind of researching the history and stuff like that. So, but to my understanding, for a very long time there, it basically ran without being under the thumb of a man. So it was kind of meant to be its own kind of female ran. Now it was supposed to be under the president of the church and stuff like that, but they kind of ran and did their own thing without much of the being under the thumb of the man. So I'd have to, maybe we get a history buff to kind of talk more on that. But my understanding was it was actually pretty. So, and they used to my understanding, they used to set apart the women would set apart women. Like it really was.
Explain what set apart is.
For the people that don't know, for people who don't know, it'd be like a blessing where they put their hands on their head and it's kind of like a blessing kind of
Yeah,
thing.
it's more
They put their hands on their
cultish
head.
like mentality.
Yeah, we get into all this stuff.
This is all
Put their hands on
cultist.
their head,
Okay,
and they would,
we're getting into the weeds.
yeah, but they would basically um, give them a calling, which a calling would be a job to do within the organization.
Well, and was
Different
polygamy still
jobs,
being practiced in the church at the time the Relief Society was started, or do you know?
So, 1843. So that was 1842. They started the Relief Society, and then
Okay.
1843 is basically when they came out about polygamy.
Okay.
So it kind of got out of the bag. I think it was more like, oh, we've been keeping this secret, but now it's kind of out. So we got to let people that it's out, let people know that it's out, and it just is.
So
It was happening before then. To my understanding, it was happening way before then. Kind of in secret.
I wonder how.
Yeah.
Well, that's the problem. So, number one thing of the 10 Commandments is don't lie, right? Which commandment is that? I can't even remember. But it's basically a religion based on lies. And see, this is the thing: is they try to distinguish secret from lies in the LDS church and the polygamous church, but that's a good cover story, right? Because anything that sacred. My thinking is that anything sacred should also be, shown or thrown, yelled to the skies, right? Because so there's nothing in the Bible that we can't, like, even the prophets in the Bible were murderous, lustful. I mean, they were, Abraham killed people. They talk about skirmishes in Abraham's time. So this idea that we must keep this secret because it's sacred is I would have to say
you don't like that, and that's okay.
It's a cult like mentality, because
sure.
If you're keeping so light is the best disinfectant, right? Like we keep hearing all through our society. So lies and deceit are not the answer at all.
Yeah.
They produce nothing of good.
Yeah. So that was 1843. 1844, Joseph was killed at Liberty Jail, and
the martyr of the church.
The martyr,
essentially.
So
this solidified him. I also wonder if he had not been murdered and just died in old age, if this would have become such a big deal. So this is what I think solidifies him as the. I wonder if he hadn't been murdered, if he would have been as popular,
prominent,
if the church would have gone on to be as big as it is. It's a multi-billion-dollar church at this point.
There's a lot of money that rolls around in the LDS church. So I don't know the exact numbers or anything like. I don't think anybody really knows.
Oh no,
but
they're not. They don't have to tell you. Well, they do have to tell the government. So, but
sure.
Anyway,
I'm not sure exactly how it all works. I know that
the fact that he
can be sealed because they're a church, and so they are able to kind of keep it on the DL. But I mean, they own tons of land in Utah.
Yeah.
And
So he's murdered.
He's murdered now, and there's so in the Under the Banner of Heaven, they say that there's like they kind of throw in some like reasons, his gallivanting with women just kind
Yeah.
of what may have been
Caught up
part of
with
it,
him.
right?
Yeah.
uh, I think that it's possible that there was a lot of threat that people could see, and that they wanted to remove him because they felt like he was a threat. So, I mean, people outside of the church, right? I think
Well, for people
so.
in the
There was probably
church,
a lot of that.
this makes him a Christ-like figure to
It
people in the
does.
church. So
Yes.
so if if you could like see the progression of the religion as far as that's concerned, you've got Judaism that starts out. They then Christ comes. The Jews don't believe in Christ as a divine being. Then the LDS people, what thousands of years goes by, then LDS people start another religion, and he's killed, and he's seen as a martyr, just like Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And most Christians don't believe in the LDS church. So it's kind of weird. It's kind of interesting where there's the Jewish people, the Israelites, who don't believe in Christ, and then there's the Christians who don't believe in uh, Joseph Smith.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like this progression of religion. It's just interesting, and they kind of steal from each other all the time because Christ is also kind of like Moses, you know.
Right, right. For Jewish people,
Yeah,
they kind of see Moses as almost like a savior figure,
yeah, yeah.
and then
And
and
then
so
Christ
I mean,
becomes the
so
same
most of the
figure.
main religions are going to have a savior figure,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
So, and I mean, I'm sure we can get into a lot of that while we're talking, Jordan Peterson stuff. So
yeah.
there's a reason for that. I think there's something inside of us wants to have a savior, someone that helps
A
save
hero.
us,
That's
a hero,
that's Joseph Campbell, a hero of a thousand
hero of a
faces.
thousand faces, a
Yeah,
hero.
a hero.
Yeah. So, so yeah. So, now, and I will say here, so after Joseph gets killed, Brigham Young kind of takes, there's a little bit of a split there where Emma goes and kind of starts her thing. That's the
The wife of
Restored
Joseph.
Church. The wife, yes, the wife of Joseph Smith kind of goes and they kind of have a church going on. Brigham Young starts to take all the saints, the Mormons, out to the west,
Utah.
into Utah, which uh, they at first they tried to get state status, and it was going to be the state of Deseret.
Hmm.
There's a lot of crap that went down with Brigham Young out in the west, out here in Utah, out in the west.
Yeah, there's some
There's a
dark
whole
shit
bunch.
about Brigham Young.
Mountain Meadow Massacre, like there's some stuff, right?
The
So
stuff that the LDS churches tried to under the carpet.
yeah, polygamy was being practiced uh, in the open,
With
and it was a tenet of the faith. And there's a lot to be said that if Joseph had not been killed, I think the face of the church would be very, very different.
yeah,
Not sure, good, worse, not sure. I I have a suspicion that Joseph Smith was actually probably more women's rights oriented, a little bit more than possibly Brigham Young, and that that may have made a lot more of a
when
patriarchal, like,
Brigham Young died, how many wives did he have?
dude, I don't even know. I don't know that
It
anybody
was
really knows. It's like
it's like
probably up,
15 or
probably
something.
50. Yeah, I don't.
50? Holy shit.
I mean, we're talking here. Some historians in the comments, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the story goes that Brigham Young was walking down the street in Utah and sees a young boy sitting on some steps, goes up to him. "You're a good-looking young man, there, son. You know, who's your father?" And the boy's like, "Why, you are, sir."
Could you imagine having so many kids?
So he's out there siring all these kids.
Jeez.
But now, we don't need to get into Andrew Tate too much, but Andrew Tate would probably be like,
that's like, okay.
Gangsta. Awesome.
Yeah.
So now, and to his credit, Brigham Young took a people that were being driven out and brought them out here. I mean, colonizer, whatever you want to call it, organizer, whatever you want to call it, an amazing feat. Yeah. Okay.
Well, he
moved the people out here.
Yeah.
They became industrious, and they kind of moved all the way up into Idaho. There was a lot. He was doing
okay. So you can have
people out.
You can have two ideas in your head at once, right? You can have the idea in your head that the practice of polygamy is most likely wrong. It's wrong practice, right? But the second idea in your head is, well, you can let people be free to do it too, right? We don't need to put, it's one of those things. It's like, who was it? Louise Perry on Chris Williams' show. She goes into this. She says that, or at least, she said this. She said, polygamy is probably the most practiced family dynamic in the world. It's also one of the most unstable practices in the world, because when the father figure dies, the family doesn't stay together, or something along those lines. And we've experienced that in our lives. So
we can we'll start getting into this kind of stuff and Chris Williamson talks about this a lot on his podcast
about polygamy.
Not necessarily about polygamy.
Oh, okay.
But with the way everything's going with online dating, people will get after me for saying this, but polygamy is kind of happening. Like, yes. There's a 20% of top
males on
cohorts of
dating
males,
that are getting all the
having sex with 80% of the women.
Yeah,
and so I'm not condoning it, but it's almost on a large scale kind of happening.
Yeah. Anyway,
we can, and we'll talk about this kind of stuff. This will be great. I mean, we can talk about this kind of stuff because there's the reason for society why polygamy is unstable is because if you've got a small percentage of all the men that get access to all the women, and then you're going to have a large percentage of men that don't have access to women.
To all the women,
and what the fuck do they do? Right?
They mob and they kill Joseph Smith. That's what happened.
They go kill Joseph Smith. So
that he was killed by a mob. And so what was happening is he was bedding all of their women and for lack of a better word, the incels or whatever that like modern media likes to portray them, is the first the most prevalent response to a jilted man is anger, like immediat's
well, and this goes into Beauty and the Beast story.
Yes,
right. Beauty and the Beast.
But let's not get into the
just 2 seconds.
Yeah,
2 seconds.
okay.
But the Beauty and the Beast story is that men can be monsters, and it is a lot of the time it is the fact that they're in a relationship that helps them to not be a monster so much. So if you've got a whole bunch of men that are not getting access to women, that can destabilize a society because they can be criminal and be monstrous, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and that's all we really need to say
And this
about
is
that.
Jordan. This is a theory of Jordan Peterson. This is a theory of a lot of
yep.
people out there. So this isn't us kind of saying this. This is fact.
We're regurgitating
okay? We're
this.
regurgitating it. Okay.
So in 1849, they actually tried to get the state of Deseret set up, and Congress rejected it. I did not know that. I guess I probably did, but just I thought that was interesting. Congress rejected it
because they're looking at it going, "This is a cult."
Yeah, they probably because there was just problems there was just a lot of problems. They were living polygamy, and I don't think people didn't want that. I think they wanted to get rid of that. So 1875, BYU was founded, Brigham Young University, for those who don't know.
The biggest university in Utah State, isn't it? Isn't it the biggest?
I don't know.
There's like 4 campuses, three campuses. There's one in Hawaii.
Yeah.
There's
Hawaii,
one in
Idaho, Utah. I think that's all of it. So this is 1870. That's 1875. 1886. This kind of starts to create a split between the polygamists and the LDS Church, because in 1886 there was allegedly there was a revelation to John Taylor, who was the third president, the third leader of the Mormon Church,
prophet. They
Joseph
like to
Smith,
call them prophets.
Brigham Young, prophets. Yep, John Taylor. So John Taylor. So they're trying to become a state. They're not letting them become a state because largely due to polygamy. And so there was talk of them, and there was allegedly there was something that John Taylor could sign that would kind of let the government know, the U.S. government know, that we're getting rid of polygamy. I mean, in a sense, to kind of become a state. So the 1886 revelation allegedly was in a John Woolley's house. John Taylor was in hiding because they
explain what a revelation is to the layman.
Oh, revelation to the layman is basically that God speaks through his prophet to say something. That's a revelation to somebody,
so
that's listening doesn't know.
This is very interesting because the church does this a lot. Okay, so the LDS Church, for convenience, will claim a revelation of something that has happened to correct bad behavior, right? So this church starts out, it's got polygamy, it's got some really horrible things towards Black people because it was the time, which that's a third rail we probably don't want to get into, but but it's got some really bad stuff that as a society progresses, they need to change, right? So they're going to take away what was formerly like their biggest thing, right? There are 2 big things in fundamentalism. It's the Book of Mormon and the polygamy aspect of it, which the Book of Mormon doesn't actually talk about it ever, does it? I don't even think it mentions polygamy.
It actually condemns polygamy. I mean,
in the Book of Mormon,
there's a prophet Jacob in the Book of Mormon that basically straight up condemns polygamy.
Okay.
So
anyway,
there's some stuff going on there.
There's some stuff going on there. So what I'm trying to get at, though, is that it's not a consistent religion. It changes often, which is okay. It's an okay thing to do as a religion. But I mean, So there's
I
this
mean, who
example
the
I
hell
like to
knows?
use. So do you remember the little Mormon cart that they were on billboards and everything, and you'd see and it was Mormon.org, right? This was
Mm-hmm.
early 2000s, I think, late
Uh-huh.
90s, early 2000s, and they were all over the place. There were billboards. It just had like faces of beautiful people, and it said Mormon.org is all it said.
Uh-huh.
And this at the time was a huge push because it was revealed to the president at the time, the prophet at the time, that this was our focus. Well, the next prophet gets into the church and it's gone. It's done. So that's what's bizarre about the religion is that
Right. The kind of the inconsistency
there's an
of,
inconsistency that goes
yeah, which you're
around.
which is kind of what we're gonna that leads us right into basically there John Taylor in this revelation basically says that he'd rather his arm be cut off than sign this document which would kind of end polygamy in the church. So it's just showing that polygamy was just a tenet of the faith and they were never going to get rid of it, and that's that, right? So right there apparently, um uh John Taylor called 5 men to do something. Like a calling is you are being called by God to do something, right? And
Which is
I actually
cultish behavior.
right.
Again,
So and John Taylor has these men basically promise that they would keep, no matter what, they would keep polygamy alive. Okay, they would just keep polygamy going no matter what. And this is where kind of the this is this is where a lot of the polygamists out that are not
sect.
part of the LDS
Yeah,
church
the
anymore
sect of
that have been
different
kicked out,
polygamists. There's groups all over.
excommunicated.
So for the layman here, there are groups of polygamous Mormons all over the United States. I don't have numbers, but they're everywhere. And Joe Rogan, I forget who he was talking to. I think it was about Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey, the show on Netflix, which is a small glimpse at what those polygamous organizations do. Like it's a very so for the layman, for the listener, keeps keep sweet,
Keep
pray
sweet, pray,
and
and obey.
obey. A terrible title, by the way, but anyway, it's uh it's a documentary series on Netflix. If you want to see kind of how they live, now that's not all of them, and they're not all the same group. They are all different groups. They
We're
follow
getting into
different
that.
people. They follow different people. They are, and this is what this documentary is about. It's about the Warren Jeffs group, and Warren Jeffs is serving what, a life sentence right now.
Yeah. Yes.
So he
Yep.
was
He is.
caught by the authorities and prosecuted
It's a very
for,
interesting documentary.
yes, a very interesting,
So
and it for,
and
what was it for? It was for um
yeah, it was rape,
child rape,
child,
pretty much.
child, no, child rape. I believe
He gave a
is
14-year-old girl to one of his leaders, right? Is that how it went?
yeah. There's also recordings of him
Doing horrible things
raping like 13-year-old or something like that um
in their
in their
temple.
temple. Yeah. Oh, it and it
It's
doesn't pull
dark
any
shit.
punches. That show
Yeah, that
doesn't pull
show's
any
rough.
punches.
So a
So
fair warning to anybody who's listening
yeah,
to, because that's
doesn't
a
pull any
rough show.
punches. So
So that's where this comes from. So the LDS Church ends polygamy, and there are
well, this
what?
was right before they ended polygamy. So this
Yeah.
revelation apparently happens while John Taylor is in hiding from persecution from the United States because of polygamy. He's in
Mm-hmm.
hiding. Then this revelation apparently happens, which is kind of the granddaddy of all the polygamists cults around. So, and then 1890, Wilford Woodruff, who is the fourth So John Taylor dies, and then Wilford Woodruff takes over. He's the fourth leader of the LDS Church.
What year is this
He
again?
basically, what's that?
What year is this again?
1890.
Okay. So we're
1890.
well past the Civil War as a country.
Yeah.
This is we're getting into territory startups.
Yeah. So
Because
at this time, I believe we were a territory.
Wyoming's not a state either. There's quite a few states.
Wyoming probably.
Wyoming's a territory.
That's a
I
good
think, in
question.
1890.
I can't remember when Wyoming became a state,
Yeah.
so I'm not sure.
Okay.
So anyway, Wilford Woodruff essentially signs a manifesto, a document that ends polygamy being practiced in the church. It's like, all right, we're done. Not happening anymore. Now, there's some nuance that the church in the United States was not practicing polygamy, but in like Canada and Mexico, they were still allowing it to happen. I don't know all the history, and I'm sure that there's a lot of people that have more access and can share documentation, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just going off of kind of hearsay from what I've heard. So yeah, that's after 1890. But as the LDS Church, as known today, the mainstream LDS Church is concerned, 1890 polygamy ended, and no longer were they going to be practicing it. And as time went on, they just had to kind of persecute, and from the religion that we were raised in, we felt persecuted a lot of the time by the LDS Church, because they had to kind of like put
there's a painful reminder of where they had come from.
Painful reminder of their past, and then all these polygamists are still happening, and they're just like, no. And so if they find out that you're going to practice or you believe or whatever, they kick you out, like they excommunicate you. They want to so pronouncedly distinguish themselves away from the polygamists that they don't accept it as a tenet of their faith anymore. Like it's
gone.
Done.
It's done.
Right. Yeah. So now polygamists now are still kind of like, well, hold on, wait a minute. It was a tenet of our faith back when all the founders started this religion.
You got to put yourself in their shoes, right? So you're a guy who has 5 wives. You followed the church, and all of a sudden the church goes, we're not doing this anymore. What do you do with your 4 wives, your other 4 wives? Like, are you going to get rid of them?
I don't really know. I think they had a grandfather, so they weren't marrying them anymore, but they had a grandfather thing where those who already had them could keep them.
Yeah.
And they just let it kind of like those people die off.
Obviously,
I don't know.
This is a big uproar. This was a big uproar in the church, because it had been one church at one time, and now you basically have this one church that turns into like just thousands of other churches that claim that they are the true church.
Yeah.
And so so nowadays, so is that it? Is there more to that, Michael, or you done?
So I mean, I was just going to go into some of the history of like the FLDS church and stuff like that. I don't know. We probably should, because it's going to get to where we were
raised.
So where we were raised in it. So from there, a few different like offsets factions of polygamous groups started, right? Some from there, a lot of them trace their authority, basically their
back to Joseph Smith.
God wanting them to do this, to that revelation, the 1886 revelation. So that's kind of a tenet of their faith, is this revelation that allegedly happened. Then in so now you've got this group one group was being led by a guy named Joseph Musser, and a polygamous group is being led by Joseph Musser, and he dies. Okay, when he dies, there's a split that happens in this polygamist church. Rulin Allred kind of takes one.
Now we're getting into modern times, right? Rulin Allred.
It's getting closer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rulin
So
Allred is actually,
what year is this? 60s, probably.
This is 1954.
Okay, so 50s.
So 1954. Rulin Allred is actually my wife's grandfather, and Christine Brown from Sister Wives, Cody, our brother's wife, is Rulin C. Allred is her grandfather as well.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So he was the leader of the church that we grew up in.
Yes, he was. So he was the leader of the church that we grew up in. There was a split that happened there, though, which is where you get the Jeffs group, the Warren Jeffs,
Warren Jeffs,
and that's the keep, sweet, pray, and obey, right?
They are true group. Cult. They went further into cult than even the Allred. The Allred group was tame at one time, in comparison.
Sure, I mean.
Well, there's okay. Well, I don't know. Like, so there's gradation of the severity of their. So if they're marrying children, that I think that's the line, right? So when 100%. They're marrying children off, and that's the line where we.
Allegedly, that is one of the big reasons for the split that happened. Now, there's
just
allegedly
tell the facts.
That's why the split happened.
Yeah.
There's some I'd have to dig more deep into it.
Okay, so one group wanted to marry children and the other group didn't. And the other group was like, no, this is not the line for us.
The group that we come from,
the Allred group.
The Allred group kind of took more of a stand. It became the AUB, the Apostolic United Brethren.
Which doesn't sound cultish at all. Like the United, like they couldn't have come up with a better name. It's let's find the most cult name we can.
This gets into some really, so the Jeffs group goes one way, the Allred group goes another way. There's some that it's all shrouded in
secrecy,
lots of different crap. Yeah.
There's murders that happen in the 1980s. Is that where you're getting to?
1977, Rulin C. Allred is murdered, shot.
From another group. Not the Jeffs group.
Allegedly, another group, a different group.
Jeez, what a mess.
And this, so Herbal LeBaron is a monster that would be, so you know how they did the Under the Banner of Heaven? They've got to do another one about Herbal LeBaron.
Herbal LeBaron. They have done. So Herbal LeBaron was another polygamous leader, a cultish
another polygamous leader. Group.
He convinced two women, just like a lot like Manson.
One was his wife. One of them was his wife.
Okay, but this is very similar to the Manson murders, and they happen around the same time.
Crazy, right?
So you can look this up. It's Herbal LeBaron. He was a polygamous cult leader. He didn't like the popularity of the Allred group, and he basically convinced two women to go murder the leader. And they killed him. They shot him in his office. Yep. He was a doctor or something like that.
Yep. And they walked in.
They made a TV movie of this called Prophet of Evil, which is not available anywhere.
No,
It starred Brian Dennehy. You've never seen this movie?
Oh, dude, I grew up watching that show.
Oh yeah, okay. So you
Yeah,
have seen
yeah,
this movie then? Yeah. So
yeah.
Brian Dennehy is a famous actor. He's most famous for, oh shoot, now I can't think of what he was in.
Uh,
FX. It was called FX. It was a movie. It was a movie in the 90s. Anyway, it was a made-for-TV movie that I can't even remember where it aired. You know what? I can probably look this up real quick. Real quick. So it was
but it was
called. Go ahead.
Prophet of Evil is the name of it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just kind of a pretty loose story of just like Errol LeBaron. And the thing was, is he didn't only kill or be responsible of killing Rulin Allred. He killed several other people, and he ended up getting caught eventually and got canned and ended up dying in prison. So that that stuff would be so interesting for
To
them
delve into the
do
guy
another
who wrote
show.
the Under the Banner of Heaven. What is his name? Oh,
I
crap,
don't
now
know.
I can't think of his name. So he should do another one on the Prophet of Evil. Okay, so it starred Brian Dennehy and William Devine. Uh, D- Devane, William Devane.
Mm-hmm.
William Devane was a famous TV actor. He was in. You'd reckon both of these actors you'd recognize if you saw them in things. But anyway, the movie came out in the it was 1993. So probably 20 years after, about almost 20 years after
Dude,
the actual.
if that show is can't be found anywhere, if Netflix, like, they could probably get it super cheap
Oh
and
yeah,
throw it on
it's
Netflix. If
yeah.
if Keep Sweet Pray and Obey was super popular, that wasn't Netflix, was it? Was that
Uh,
Hulu?
no, that was Netflix.
That was Netflix. Okay,
Keep Sweet, Pray and
if
Obey. Yeah,
if that was a hit, they should find that show and throw it on there and see what people think, so that they can think about either that or
yeah.
Hulu, so that
Well,
they can think about getting.
it would be interesting, but anyway, it's tough to find. It doesn't, like, I can't find anywhere. Yeah, it's not coming up on anything really.
So and
I'm gonna read the summary of it. It's the
okay,
takedown of an infamous leader of a small polygamous Mormon fundamentalist group who ordered assassinations of his opponents. That's what that
yeah,
movie's about. It's called The
rock and roll
Prophet of Evil. It's
basically.
1993. Stars Brian Dennehy. It's not available. It's a TV movie, so I can't
Yeah.
even find where it aired.
To be honest, though, I felt like
Shit.
growing up watching it, I thought that it was pretty good. Um,
Depiction.
like acting, like the acting, I thought
Oh
was
yeah.
good. The story seemed fairly well put together. You know, um, they
It
kind of had it was kind of, if you think about it, it was kind of similar to Under the Banner of Heaven, because he was a
yeah,
cop, and it shows the story of the cop.
of the cop who caught him, who took him
Yeah,
down.
and it shows like his
Yeah.
family life. It kind of talks about his family, like, it just so
Anyway,
interesting stuff. So
interesting. It is interesting. And this is all part and parcel of what's coming out now. So what
yeah.
was the documentary series about the salamander letters? On
Oh yeah.
Netflix? What's that?
Murder Among the Mormons.
Murder Among the Mormons. So
Yeah, that
so
was
there
Netflix, wasn't it?
that was
Yeah,
Netflix. So also, so
yeah,
Murder Among the Mormons is also, it's about a forger, and so when you get a audience member, whoever is listening, should look up that show, and that's another Netflix documentary show where they basically, it was about a forger who forged documents that the church thought were real, that the LDS Church, and they did a
and they were
lot
buying
to.
from him.
They were buying from him
Yeah,
these documents, like old documents that he
yeah.
had forged, and that's where the, what is it, the substant, like the inability to see the holes in the religious belief
Mm-hmm.
because they believed that the letters or the things that he was putting out there were so real that they were buying them and keeping them from the public because it basically said that the church wasn't true. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot of nefariousness going
Yeah.
on with
A
the
lot of,
LDS
lot of
church with that.
nefarious stuff going on there. So, right, just shortly after that, Roland C. Allred was killed by Ervil LeBaron. And in 1984, so just a few years later, that's when Don and Ron Lafferty killed Brenda and Erica that's Under the Banner of Heaven story.
Yes. And Under the Banner of Heaven is very well done. It was made last year, and it's if anybody gets a chance, it's actually based on a book by, let me look it up.
By the same name, Under the Banner of Heaven.
Yeah, it's called Under the Banner of Heaven.
Yeah. Loosely based. It's
by John Krakauer. So John Krakauer is like a big what do you call them? They're like research investigators kind of, but he writes a bunch of stuff. I haven't read any of his books, but I want to do Under the Banner of Heaven. So Under the Banner of Heaven is about the Lafferty murders or murder. They murdered her baby too.
Yep. 15 months old.
Oh man, what a bunch of monsters.
What?
How they justified that in their head.
Bastards.
Because one of the tenets of the LDS church is family. It's extremely family oriented. It's extremely about, producing healthy children and good children and healthy members of society and all that kind of stuff. So that is a good thing about it. So they were LDS and they broke off from the LDS church because they started doing research into polygamy. They got into polygamy and then they convinced themselves at some point that they had to kill it was their sister-in-law. Their brother's
wife. Their brother's wife. Yeah.
And her baby.
And her daughter. Yeah.
You have to jump through a lot of hoops to get from family is the most important thing to I'm going to murder my family. Like there's a huge jump. There's a huge camp, so Under the Banner of Heaven was produced.
And to be clear, those guys were excommunicated from the church,
from the LDS church,
I believe, before any of that went down.
Yeah, before. So they were not justified.
Yeah,
and they're both serving life sentences.
100%.
So this was in the 80s, I believe.
No, didn't they? One died. Didn't one die? Or did both of them die? Both of them did? I don't know. Anyway.
All right, that brings us to today.
I mean,
okay.
That leads us to basically our time.
Our time. So I'm going to just briefly.
I mean, if we wanted to, we can talk about us leaving it. And then...
I'm going to briefly talk about our parents. So our parents were both raised LDS. Our father served a mission, and it was in 1989. They started looking into polygamy. We're not going to try to out anybody, but this was in Lovell, Wyoming. Lovell has only reached prominent, what do you call it, notoriety only a couple of times, and one of them is the Doctor Story. There's a book called Doc by hold on, I got it over here, Jack Olson. It's a very good book, but it's basically about a doctor who raped a bunch of women in this town. And this happened. So our parents left the LDS church, or were outed at the LDS church within 5 or 6 years of this scandal with this doctor. And so the the mentality of the town was they didn't want to put up a lot with lies anymore. And they really went at our parents. They ostracized our parents like nobody's business, like just cut them off. Once they were outed as trying to practice polygamy, or they had, so our dad married another woman, brought her. So we grew up on a cattle ranch, and it could be affectionately referred to as the compound, because everybody talks about the compound as the place where you escape from polygamy. So our upbringing wasn't the quintessential cult. Okay. So our parents still allowed us to watch movies. Our parents still allowed us to listen to music. I was taken out of school at 5. And then I went back to high school at 15, 16. I was taken out of to be homeschooled by mom. So what mom saw happening is that people were being very mean to us in school. And so she decided not to send you or our sister to school. She took me out, and she took our older brother out, Curtis. What was that, Michael?
I said, God rest his soul.
Yeah, our brother Curtis died in 2013.
I said,
so anyway, so Curtis got taken out of school. Our sister, our oldest, so there's 10 of us. Okay, I should say there's 10 of us from our father and our mother, because our father never had children from any of his other wives. They got into it too late. I think dad was in her
50s.
late 40s, 50s when he got into it. So they took us out of school. And for 10 years, we were pretty much in that town. People would talk about us, but we were not invited to anything. There was no going to social gatherings, none of that for 10 years. It took us 10, it might have been 11 years before I made the decision to go back to high school. I had a ton of reasons to do it, because first, I wasn't going to be part of the religion. I decided I didn't want to be. And it's a credit to mom. Dad wanted to force it, but it's a credit to our mother that she didn't want to do it. She didn't want to force me to do it. So she was just like, I'll let you make the decisions. And so I decided to go back to high school with my sister's daughter, who's technically my niece, but she was more like a cousin because she's the same age. We're the same age, and we went to high school together. And for the first 2 years there, we were the only friends that we had, because nobody was going to talk to us. Nobody's like, I remember, like, I think I'd been there for a month. I had gone back to high school for about a month. And I remember the first thing that somebody said to me, and it was just shallow and stupid. And anyway, so we slowly clawed our way back into the Society of Lovell, which then we had a couple of nieces and nephews that went back to high school that decided not to be homeschooled. And you were completely homeschooled.
I was homeschooled until college. Yeah. I never went to public school. Yeah, it's still kind of weird sometimes, because like my people will ask me, like, what grade is your kid in? And I'm just like, I don't know the grade stuff. Just no idea. In fact,
no idea.
Being raised on the compound on a ranch where, I mean, you kind of mentioned we were allowed to watch movies and things like that, but there was still a ton of sheltering that was going on. I don't think we were as bad as, as our brother's kids. We'll probably have some of them on eventually, maybe. Who he was a little bit more. We have a brother that's a little bit more fanatical, I guess you could say. We love him, but it's just kind of the truth. He wanted to shelter his kids, and hell, maybe we'll have him on sometime. But I still, there will still be things people will be like, "Oh, you never heard of that?" And because I just was raised just so separated from it that I just like,
Yeah.
fuck if I know, I don't know.
Well, I'm the same way. Like there's
uh,
whole pop culture things basically from the 70s to the 90s that I usually don't like. I know pop culture from 90s on because I was obsessed with it after I left the group. And but there's whole gaps of pop culture that have no I don't know anything about. So
yeah, yeah.
like
So
what are the old 80s sitcoms and stuff like that? I have no like I never watched a episode of Full House or anything like that. So I, I don't know.
yeah, we didn't have television. We would watch VHS movies. So with that, I want to say that I liked some of my upbringing. I was talking to one of my buddies that was also there on the the ranch, the compound, and I I feel like we were kids. We were able to just kind of go explore and kind of run around, and we did some adventurous stuff. I mean, we rode horses, we ran cattle. I mean, it wasn't all bad. That's what I'm saying. It wasn't all bad. Um, I was homeschooled until I went to college years and years and years later. But well, I did do some college in Wyoming. That's right, and then came and did some in Utah. But I mean, we learned to work hard, and uh, so I mean, I don't know. It wasn't. I didn't think it was like just all bad, but but yeah,
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it was all bad either, but there was like it's hard to explain to other people because when people think of a polygamous cult, they kind of think of like people dance around naked or like around fires and having crazy sex orgies and stuff like that. That's not how it was. I mean, they either think that or they think of the people who have the button up and the long sleeves and the weird hair.
whoop
You know,
whoop hair.
yeah, Big Love did Big Love did the Big Love the HBO series. If anybody's interested, can check that out. It was around, oh, it's probably been 10 years since that show was on the air. But what was interesting about that show is it actually showed two kinds of groups. They had the polygamists who were wealthy, who were kind of more integrated into society, and then they had the compound polygamists who live on a compound, who separate themselves from society and who have the weird hair and have the crazy dress, like an old timey dress. And our life on the ranch was very much in between. There was our mother was really into music and loved music of all kinds, and so our exposure to pop culture, although curated by our parents, was not completely cut off. Whereas if you were in the Warren Jeffs group, it would have been completely cut off.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
don't think
you
they even had TVs.
yeah,
Yeah,
we didn't have television, but we rented movies a lot. So that's where we were. And so we weren't that, it wasn't, but that's why I call it cult light or light cult, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Diet Coke, Diet cult.
Yeah.
It's not what people think of when they think of cult, but which is why they allowed me to go back to high school. So that's our upbringing, and that's kind of where we're at. So I think where we're at now would be interesting to talk about. So for me, when do you remember the first time you discovered Jordan Peterson?
Oh, I was starting to consume a little bit more and more. It would have been probably like mid 2017, I think.
Yeah.
Listening to him, I I first found him, and it was basically due to his stance on not using transgender pronouns.
Hmm.
Basically, he's like, this is the hill I'm going to die on. You can't force me to say words that I don't want to say. He's like,
That's what he was talking about. He wasn't talking about.
that's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
He's just not. Like, I'm not going to do it.
This has made him infamous.
Well, and I would say that that's kind of what got him out there. And he's even said this. People found me because of the political stuff, but they stick around because of the psychological, my psychological and physical, philosophy.
Well, and we should. Okay, so Jordan Peterson burst on the scene probably 2016 or 17 when he's a practicing psychologist. I always get psychiatrist and psychologist mixed up, but so he's a practicing psychologist in
you and all half of America.
Yeah. And he's in Canada, and he becomes very prominent when he makes the statement against compelled speech in Canada, which we can, regardless of what the compelled speech is, we can all agree that compelled speech is wrong, because one person's compelled speech is another person's tyranny. So he does this, becomes prominent. I discovered some of his videos online shortly after. I think it's 2018 when his book comes out. So his book 12 Rules for Life. I would encourage anybody who's listening to this who hasn't listened to what he does. His biblical series, his initial Genesis biblical series, the social or the psychological
significance of the Bible
the Bible is, in my opinion, probably the best content ever put to YouTube. And that is saying a lot, because what he did for me is somebody who comes from this cult, who enters into a arguably another cult with the LDS Church. As far as religion is concerned, I've kind of been on the fence about a lot of things. But when he started talking about Exodus and the psychological significance, the Cain and Abel story alone has a ton of psychological significance that he points out. And for me, that has been more insightful than anything else that I've ever learned in religion, in my mind. So I'm very much like him, Jordan Peterson, just kind of struggling through the religious thing, because I've always said this, and I remember saying this to Mom when I was in probably just out of high school when I was in college. I said to her, I'm my religion is always wrestling with my reason. Because it's always doing this thing where, oh yeah, maybe there's a God, maybe there isn't. Maybe we're just a bunch of ants on a hill, fighting for, the best things in life kind of thing. So I'm always in this mode of learning, and Jordan Peterson's talks are way more interesting to me than anything else that I've ever come across.
And you use the word interesting, but I would say like it's hitting a chord. There's something to it. There's something deep and very human, deep in the soul, I think, that it kind of just speaks to,
Mm-hmm.
talking about these biblical stories and coming at them from a very well, he would say coming at them as a psychologist.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Yeah.
and so as and even just, a philosopher, a psychologist, a deep thinker coming to talk about the biblical, the Genesis. And he even says, like, if you went to a bank, an investor, and said, I want to rent out a theater and talk about the Bible,
Yeah, it's like
they'd
it's
laugh
almost
you out of the room.
yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
build this business on talking about the Bible, and but he's sold out all the time, and he's selling out everywhere.
Yeah, he's selling out
And
everywhere.
and so it's like,
So
well,
it's
what the hell? And you've got the whole religious community that are all kind of looking at him, scratching their heads, and they're just like, how is he getting people to come to his lectures? How is he getting people to come talk to him?
because it speaks to
The
people.
Catholics,
Yeah.
the Protestants,
Yeah.
and they're all kind of just like, well, we've been seeing an exodus out of our churches for a long time, and
Yeah.
I believe that, and I don't know the stats. Ben Shapiro, I think, kind of hit on the stats once, that there's kind of this mass migration out
Out
of
of the church.
churches
Yeah.
in general.
But I think
It's
we're
not
seeing
just the LDS
yeah, it's not just the
church.
LDS church. I think we're seeing a come back to the church because of COVID. Something happened with COVID that made people go, something's missing. And I think people are
Well,
starting
Jordan was selling out theaters
before
before
then.
COVID. Jordan was
Yeah.
selling out theaters before COVID.
Yeah, that's a good
So
point.
it could be, I'm sure COVID has a big part to play in it,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
think this was happening. People were searching for something, meaning. I think it's people searching for meaning, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We've all of our all of our uh, all of our needs have been met for so long that we're kind of just like, well, what's the point of all of this?
Yeah.
You know, the struggle of 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 life, and of having to go through life, but not just that we have to worry about where our next meal is going to be from, but just kind of living, and we're all kind of living this, you know, fairly, I guess,
Comfortable.
cushiony would be
Yeah.
the right
Comfortable.
compared to our ancestors
Yeah.
who had to, starve until they found their next kill.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, like we we're and
Well, how do you
some of these
explain?
things, depression and stuff, are kind of new phenomena.
Yes, because well, how do you explain the popularity of Joe Rogan, of Chris Williamson, of Ben Shapiro? Like they're basically people who started podcasts that are about bigger things than the regular how much can I buy or what can I buy and that kind of thing. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the superficial, because Joe Rogan's always looking for the big ideas. He's got always got interesting people on, and Chris
Mm-hmm.
Williamson is the same way. He's got super interesting people on his show. So there's this need for people to not only learn more, but um, you know, just like
Find something
yeah, find something to yeah. So it's like
outside of
Viktor
Viktor Frankl. Yeah,
Frankl's, yeah,
yeah.
Viktor Frankl. Anybody listening, please read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. It's about he's a Jewish psychologist who went to Auschwitz and he had a
Survive the concentration camps.
survive the concentration camps and had a very unique perspective of how people get through difficulty. And it's through meaning, really. So and that this is what Jordan Peterson is talking about, and this is what this podcast is going to be talking about. We're going to be kind of doing this deep dive search, and we're going to go from we're going to talk about movies occasionally, but a lot of the time
Yeah,
we're going to
and a lot of times the deep things that make movies what we love are part of the things that Jordan Peterson talks about.
mm-hmm.
Like he did a deep dive into like uh Lion King. He did a deep dive into Pinocchio.
Yeah, those are
And just
really
some
good
of these
lectures.
shows that uh, that people uh, love, right? And we're going to talk about them. A lot of movies and just like what they mean to us and like what the deep dive into like why we think they mean something deep
Mm-hmm.
to people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what this is about. We're
Yeah,
we're we're going to deep dive into those things. It'll be kind of random
yeah.
because
Hence the name of the
we're the
show,
Brothers
The
Random.
Brothers Random. I think our next episode we're going to try to do a deep dive into Exodus, which I'm showing right now.
Mm-hmm.
So we are not paid by the Daily Wire, which produces this. We're just fans, and Exodus is very good. And what we are going to do is we're going to try to, after watching each episode, we're going to try to basically
Talk about it.
talk about it and just discuss what we liked about it, that sort of thing. So anyway, I'm sharing this with you so the audience, if they are interested, can listen to that before we do our thing. We'll see where this goes. It's very much an experiment, and we hope that you guys come along for the
And
ride.
I'm sure in the future we'll look back on our first episode and be like, man, that was shit. But
Yeah,
that's progression. Jordan Peterson talks about starting out something as the fool.
yeah.
You're always going to start something as the fool, right? So we're just fools. So we're just fools. We're just starting this out,
Yeah,
and
and hopefully we'll get
get
better
better.
at it. So anyway, if
So
you're interested, do all the. I guess this is the point where we beg for your guys'
the beg,
subscriptions.
please follow us.
Yeah,
Please follow us online.
do all this stuff.
We'll put
We need to buy
all of
Michael a
our
better mic.
social media and things like that in. We'll put the social media and everything like that in the show notes.
Yeah. Okay. All right, brother. We'll call it.
Till next time.
We need a side out of some kind. I don't know. We'll think of it. Maybe. So, Anyway, we will talk later.
Till next time.
Great.
See ya.